My name is Dr. Jo Brown. I'm a performance coach and performance physiotherapist. How I think of myself is a little bit like the glue within the team. So I quite often end up being the person that travels with the athlete, and I can perform many different roles. And so I can be that go-between the coach and the massage therapist and the sports psychologist, and be the glue that can see the whole picture.
The words there of sports performance specialist Dr. Jo Brown, who has for over 2 decades worked with some of the world's finest athletes, including reigning world and Olympic 100-meter champion Noah Lyles and the 2011 World 100-meter champion, Jamaica's Johan Blake. She has worked with athletes from as many as 19 sporting disciplines and has now taken her expertise into the world of literature as she prepares to launch her new book entitled See Your Elephant, Discover What's Holding You Back from Your True Potential. In the book, she shares insights into how self-awareness and unbounded personal growth can help individuals to achieve life goals. Dr. Jo Brown joins us live in studio, all the way from New Zealand originally. Is that where you're still based?
Still now in Australia. So, but I actually had to fly there in New Zealand because of flight changes. But
yes.
Yeah, based in Australia.
Oh, well, talk to us first of all about what inspired you to get into this profession.
Well, I started off as a physiotherapist and obviously working more with the physical side of people's bodies. And I actually had a moment at the Australian Open, which you'll love. And I was the only female working in the men's room at the Australian Open, so that was quite rare. And I was observing all the top athletes in the world, and Federer and Nadal were there, and I just questioned what was the difference that made people like those guys, you know, the true champions, like legends of a sport, what was the difference between them and then the other top 100? Because physically they look quite similar, yeah, and they don't warm up any different. They've all got great shots. And I was like, what was it? And so I just observed them for like 3 days. And what I noticed was it was not just about their habits, but how they did life. So they were really intentful with every interaction they had, including with myself. So I had Federer and Nadal opening the door for me and got to know my name because I was new and I was different, and they obviously recognised that to be there I had to be someone special. And I think that's a true trait of a high performer, is being able to live every moment with intent and every interaction. And so it led me down a path of doing more and more study and eventually writing the book.
Yeah, and you know, we started the show by saying that sport is just as much mental, probably even more so, than it is physical. How much could you expand on that comment?
Oh my God, it's huge. We could be here all night, but essentially how I think of it is everyone's individual performance is like a pie, a performance pie. And each person needs different elements. So you need a physical element, you need the mental element, you need the emotional regulation element, you need the support from your friends and family, you need great coaching, all those things. And so what we all need is quite individual, and we need to be able to understand the specific ingredients for each individual. So one person might need more eggs than another person, so to speak. Yeah. And then we mix it differently and we bake it differently. So that whole idea of that we can train a whole track and field group exactly the same and they all reach their optimum potential, I don't believe is true. I think we need to really begin to understand the whole human in order to bring out their best performance.
Yeah, and you know, when I think about this, right, Jo, my first thing is, you know, how important is it that, you know, you build that sort of relationship with the athlete that you're working with? Because you worked with Noah Lyles and he is a showman, you know, and I mean, for all you know, that's just what he does in front of the camera, because I know people can put on one personality when they're on, and behind the scenes, they're very, very different. how important is it for you and, you know, just in your profession that you really have that connection with the athletes? Because I read various interviews and stories about you, just how you even got the job with Noah, you know, by simply just helping him out when he needed it. And then he said, well, we all should talk.
There's so many components to that question. I think I want to start with, like, yes, relationships are super important, and you're never going to achieve your greatest performance, your best performance, without the right people in your corner. I talk about in the book about 4 pillars of performance. The first is about your purpose and perception, so really knowing your mindset, getting all that stuff clear, aligning with your goals, your values. The second is planning and processes, so that's like making sure you have a process and intent and allocation of resources and all those kind of things. And I think here in the Caribbean, sometimes what happens is there's a mismatch of resources and people aren't necessarily getting what they need. But I actually have seen that help people gain better things because of that adversity, and I talk about that in some interviews in the book, and some Jamaicans are actually in that. The third pillar is about how you actually execute, so that's your patterns and practice. But the fourth, and I think the pillar that people forget about, which is what we're talking about, is people, and it's about people and power. So the people that we trust and the people that we care about influence us, but it's also about who we choose to influence. So there's 2 components to it. It's who we choose to influence and who we let influence us, and that people, they're who you give your power to. So I think that's a really important component. And those relationships can't happen without that trust and care, but you've also got to prioritize that. And Noah was one for always prioritizing his care and the people around him and making sure he had the right people and the right fit. And if I wasn't the right person at the right time, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and do you find, like, as of recent, because my sister is also an athlete, and, you know, we have conversations. Previously, when she joined West Indies cricket, a performance coach was not something that people would talk about. Like, it was not part of the setup or anything like that. I find, as of recently, and I think even the athletes, they appreciate the work that they get done with their performance coach. Do you feel like now a lot of sports are, you know, involving performance coach and understanding and recognizing the importance of having one?
100%. I think it's very much a growing industry, and I think it's evolving like monthly, weekly. At the moment, I'm actually in the process of setting up and writing a course for other people to transition from either just being a physio or strength coach into that performance coaching space and really adding in those mental sides of it.
Yeah, and one of the things, because I didn't get to read the book just yet, but before
it's
you
coming,
came...
it's right here.
No, well, Ricardo has claimed it already.
I'll find you guys another one, we're good.
Yeah. So one of the things I saw on this summary, because I looked on Amazon and I was checking it out and everything.
She's into it.
Yeah. You spoke about the importance of feedback. And, you know, I thought about that for myself because, you know, there's good feedback and there's bad feedback. Do you talk about that, like, in detail in the book?
I talk about feedback in detail in relation to how we process and want to receive feedback. And I think as a performance coach, it's really important to really understand how the person you're dealing with, the athlete or executive, whoever they are, how they process feedback, how much feedback they can handle, and the best way for you to articulate for them. So some people, I can give them all the feedback in the world, like Noah's a process everything, I've got it. Whereas other people, it's just one little snapshot, take away, feed on that, learn from this, use this learning, we'll reassess and go again. So but the big thing is, if you're afraid of feedback, that's when you stay in your comfort zone and you don't actually have that chance to grow.
Yeah, Ricardo.
Yeah, just to be clear, you have done some work with some of Jamaica's finest sprinters, and we did reference Johan Blake, but you've also worked with a few others, haven't you?
I'm actually in town right now. I'm helping out Megan Tapper, one of the hurdlers, and travelled with the Jamaican team to World Champs in 2019, and then helped them at Commonwealth Games in 2018, and I've been back and forth. I have a love for the place and the people, so I keep coming back. And
you've also had a stint with the Jamaica bobsleigh team.
Yes, that was in COVID of all things. Chris Stokes from Jamaican Bobsleigh, you know, called me up and said, hey, look, we really want to qualify the four-man for the first time since the original team. So it was 24 years at the time, and I love a mission, I love a challenge. I was like, okay, I'm in, and then COVID happened. It was like, we're still going for this, it's still happening. Yeah. So, and they qualified, it was amazing. So, and they've actually got World Champs coming up in March, so I'm planning to join them in New York in March and, you know, go for another round at the Olympics. And they're doing amazing. I'm so proud of the team right now. They're just really creating history right now. It's really cool.
Yeah, very much in demand. I do want to get to the idea of a performance coach. And I'm very happy that you have this wealth of experience in Jamaica, which I think when you go across the Caribbean, it can be pretty similar. Whereas when you speak specifically about the mental side of sport and sports psychology, a lot of the athletes, when they hear that term, they go, well, you kind of have to be crazy to need a psychologist, and so they shy away from it. One, I want to get if that has been your experience, and then I want you to transition to help us understand how we got to the term performance coach.
Yeah, great question. And I think in different parts of the world, performance coach is interpreted in different ways.
Yeah.
Disclaimer. And I very much got to a point, I've done sports psychology learnings and teachings and studied it, but I'm not a sports psychologist, Claire. I've done lots of coaching, NLP, all those kind of things, mindset coaching, and then also coach the physical side from a biomechanics, physical and physiotherapy. So performance coach was kind of the term that I used to bring all the things that I do together rather than it's a consistent term. I could say mindset coach and performance coach. I could say physical and mental performance coach. Like, there's so many different elements to it. But what I believe that we need to change the language around performance and around how people deal with the mental side. So I think when we start with the wording of coaching, it is less scary for the athlete. They don't think that there's anything wrong. Like, coaching means getting better.
Yeah.
And I'm all about best performance. So I'm all about seeing where you're at, looking at what's working, what's not, looking at all your performance gaps, whatever they are, physical, mental, biomechanics, emotional, whatever it is, facing them head on, dealing with them. And once we deal with them, which is your elephant, and we talk about that in the book, then it's all about learning.
Yeah.
And then if we can change the language to it being about how can we be better, what's the gap, how do we close it, next level, the athletes are on board. And I'm lucky from my space of, you know, developing relationships, I think, from being a physio and being in an athlete's personal space, you really develop that trust really quickly. And once an athlete trusts you, you have that opening to then say, hey, you can call them out on their BS, so to speak. And blind spot, BS, elephant, same thing in my book. See, I didn't swear on TV. But I really believe the language is changing, but it starts with relationship and trust and having the right language to have that platform.
Yeah. It's interesting because, as you would have already picked up, I'm a massive tennis fan, and the term performance coach first came to me when I was watching the Netflix series Breakpoint, and it was Aryna Sabalenka and trying to win her first Grand Slam title at the Australian Open. And throughout the entire series, the performance coach became a focal point, just as important as the technical coach or the physio. I want to get an understanding from your standpoint as the performance coach, and I know you say you bring everything together, but how difficult is it for you to work within teams where you now have a coach who has their ideas of how things are supposed to be done? You have the manager, you have the agent, you have the physiotherapist, you have the massage therapist, and here you are dropping into that and saying, well, I'm going to bring all of this together.
Two words: respect and boundaries. So the first is respecting everyone else in the team, their knowledge and what they bring, and then creating boundaries. And then having that, and the third word would be communication. So having that capacity to come together and communicate your ideas openly with respect and respecting of boundaries.
Yeah, awesome. See your elephant.
Yes.
An elephant shouldn't be difficult to see. So big.
I know, right? Well, that's the whole idiom. That's where it all came from. And obviously everyone knows the idiom, see the elephant in the room, and it's the thing that you're ignoring, what you're choosing not to deal with. And what the reason for writing the book for me was, one, knowing that there's so many mental barriers to performance and the role that having a really clear idea of living your life with intent and how you do life impacts performance, but then seeing so many people not reach their potential.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart. Like, I see athletes everywhere globally just not reaching their potential. Like, wow, what if they could deal with their stuff, their blind spots, their elephants, and live their true potential? And then I started writing the book and telling stories. There's some Jamaican stories in there. And
How long did it take to get the book done?
is that 12 months? I was primarily traveling on the road with Noah at the time, so when I wasn't training and working with him, I was in a hotel room, so plenty of time to sit and contemplate, and yeah.
You know, Mariah kind of touched on it earlier on about what we see from an athlete, the optics, what they present to the public, and what they may be behind closed doors. Noah Lyle does appear to have a natural personality of confidence and you know, exuberance. That's just the picture that he creates when you look at him in an interview, when you look at him train, when you look at him perform. Is that really him?
100%. So Noah is what I call in the book a seeker. So a seeker is someone that goes after their best performance 100% of the time. They're a competitor 100% of the time. They're always wanting feedback, what more, what next. They climb a mountain, they're looking for the next peak, they never stop. And Noah is 100% that guy 100% of the time. He's there, lives his whole life with intent. He's very clear on what he wants to do, how he wants to change the world, how he's going to do it. He's always checking with himself, his people. Is he on target? Is he reaching his benchmarks? That's a true high performer.
Yeah, just minutes before his 100-meter victory at the Paris Olympics last year, he sprinted onto the track and looked as if he was ready to deliver something special. He was not favourite to win. Many people did not think he would have won. What was going through his mind in those moments before this big race? Because it would have been the biggest race of his career, and not many people expected him to win.
We, as his team at the time, believed he had done the work. He'd done everything he needed to in training to deliver his best performance on that night. Whatever the time was, that didn't matter. It was all about winning. The gold medal became the goal, essentially, after winning Worlds in 2023. So when that was on the table, that was 100%. I wasn't in his head, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it's my time to shine. It's my time. It's my gold medal to win.
Yeah. I have so many questions. Sorry, I never usually do. But when you say see your elephant,
I love it that you have lots of questions, by the way.
When you say see your elephant, right? Like, how long does it take you, Joe, to actually figure out what's that elephant? And okay, so you're working with people from different cultures, from different countries, countries that you would not have lived in before, cultures that you have no clue about. So does it take you long to tap into that elephant?
Some people, it's really obvious in their body language and the way they speak, the way they've conducted themselves in the past. Some people, it can take me a couple of minutes of talking to you. I could ask you a couple of questions, and I was like, how does that show up? And you're like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is your elephant type of thing. For other people, it takes a little bit longer. Definitely cultural differences will change what your elephant is. One of the elephants is actually judgment, and your perception of judgment, marginalisation, stigmas, all those kind of things. And I think there's a lot of people that carry judgment around. It's the elephant. And I'm sure, you know, all around the world they're different. And whether you're from the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand, like, I perceive that I had judgment because I'm white and working with Caribbean athletes, right? Yeah. And, you know, whether or not that's true or not, I can choose whether that affects me. Yeah. And I chose to, like, no, I'm here, I can make a difference. I want to be here because I want to make a difference. And whether that was a thing or not, I chose not to let it affect me. So I think it's all about being, and there's 4 tools that you learn about in the book, and one of them is being willing to be authentic, and another one is courage. Like, it's scary facing your stuff, but the more we all face our stuff, the more likely we are to reach our true potential. And I'm just all about supporting people reaching their true potential.
Yeah.
One of the things you see with, I guess, athletes right across the world, certainly in the Caribbean and specifically in Jamaica, where track and field fans can be harsh. So athletes have to deal with a lot. So, for example, I was at the Commonwealth Games in 2022. And
Awesome.
in Birmingham, yeah, and there was a British athlete. He was last in the race, and everybody was supporting him all the way around just the same. If you're not winning in Jamaica, and many athletes have complained about this, if you're not one of the big names, the appreciation isn't often there. And not just that there isn't appreciation, but there can often be criticism that is unnecessary and just downright harsh. Are there mechanisms in this book on how the athletes can deal with situations like that? Because it's a common thing across the Caribbean.
Yeah, there is some methods in the book that I talk about in relation to some of the athletes in terms of dealing with those kind of issues. Like social media has changed the playing field for everyone, right? Like you need a whole completely, like you have your kit that you race or you play in, and then you have your kit, your armor when you go home that you deal with the social media stuff. And being on the inside of some of these teams, and like you can't help but feel it. Like when Noah was copping flack, like before the Olympic 100 final, when people were saying like he's going to do nothing and everything, and I'm like, you get fired up. You can't help but be a part of that. But I really encourage people to be true to themselves and not try and be someone else in order to be something on social media. And the seekers will use social media to their advantage, and they'll use it like a business tool, right? But they won't let it change who they are.
Yeah, like control your narrative.
Yeah, controlling your narrative, 100%. And then, it comes into emotional regulation. So one of the elephants is turmoil, which is being able to regulate yourself under pressure. And that's an element of dealing with social media, right? It's not reacting, or in an interview, and we won't say what just happened to the Australian Open because that's a bit controversial. But, that's part of it, is being able to regulate yourself and knowing when to just say nothing.
Yeah.
And I really think that education around social media and understanding how the algorithms work and all that kind of stuff should be a part of, athletes growing up if you're going to be a professional athlete.
Yeah, well, don't worry. There's nobody on this panel who is going to call any sportsman or woman a has-been. Right, Lance?
No.
Once an athlete, always an athlete. And that mindset of being an athlete never changes.
Yes.
And that's why so many great athletes become amazing business people, and they're amazing at generating ideas and can be quite entrepreneurial because they have that creativity in what they do in sport and can carry it over.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I can read this book in one night. I should
Yeah,
be
because
able
you
to.
have to bring it back.
I'm just going to sign it to the SportsMax team and you just can fight over it.
If I read this book, well, I will read the book. If I win a tennis title this year, I'll dedicate it to this book.
You have to social media though, right?
Yeah.
In a good way, so I don't have to emotionally regulate afterwards.
Okay, for sure.
Doc, it's really great having you on
Thank
the
you so much
SportsMax
for
Zone.
having me, guys.
I think we got a lot out of this interview,
Awesome.
and we are very appreciative of the fact that sports stars today are a lot more embracing of a performance enhancer than they would have been 20, 30 years ago. And,
A performance coach, Lance. Careful
So
how you use that term.
Where I work in Australia, they call me the optimizer.
yes,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
And there's a good reason why you're labeled that. Congratulations on the work that you've done so far and your book.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
We'll
It's
be
been great.
reading it for
Thanks,
sure.
y'all.
Still a lot more to come on the SportsMax Zone. We'll be back in a moment.